Today we're going to be looking at Punky color in the color Turquoise. I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. I'll do pictures and clips near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. These are human hair, but the only one that's going to be virgin hair is the number 4 black swatch. The rest have been chemically colored or bleached at some point in their existence. So to start, I'm going to take the dye directly from the container and I'll put it at the top of each swatch. And then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I'll do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. I also want to jump in and say that when I buy these swatches, sometimes the hair colors vary a little bit, and I couldn't really find a good number 9 swatch to go here, so I'm sorry that this is kind of a big jump, but if this colors the number 10 and the number 9, you'll know that if your hair is in between, it'll also probably color very well. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Also, different screens and monitors can change how color looks, especially the undertone. So please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're gonna do a 1:4 ratio, so it's gonna be 1 part of the color to 4 parts of diluter. If you're curious what I mean by diluter, the simple answer I like to give for these videos is just that it's something that lightens the color of the dye. Each brand usually will make something you can use to dilute with where it's clear and you mix it with your dye, but I like to just use a plain white conditioner. To make sure that these completely absorb the color, I'm gonna give it about 3 hours before I rinse it out. When they're dry, I'll meet you back here and we can do some comparisons. So I'm very pleased to see that this colored pretty much all of the swatches except the number 4. So earlier when I was saying that I didn't have really a good swatch to go between 9 and 10, now you know that if you have a color that's like between 9 and 10, it will definitely color your hair. But 2 things to add with that: the darker your hair looks, the slightly more green that seems to pull through with this color. And also, if you have anything darker than a platinum blonde and it's virgin hair that's never been dyed before, there is a chance that even if this colors your hair, it may not stick to your hair very well. Just depends on your hair. So one was pink, that's completely covered, cannot even tell that it was originally pink. I would say the biggest difference is that it looks a little bit more cool toned in comparison to the lighter swatches. I'm assuming because pink and green would technically be kind of across from each other in the color wheel. The pink in the hair kind of took away some of those green tones and left it with a more bluish tone. Number 2 is gray. Usually number 2 looks the most cool toned, but because of what I explained with number 1, it's actually not as cool toned as number 1, but it's still slightly more blue leaning than like the number 11 swatch. So toning some of those yellows out of your hair might get you a slightly more blue look if that's what you're going for. So the number 3 turned out very similar to how the number 5 and 6 turned out. Like I said, the darker the hair, the more green that comes through. It's not quite as green as the like 6 especially. Again, that could be because of the red tones in the hair, but it still looks relatively green. There's not really any blue that comes through even on the diluted section. Number 4 stayed black. 5 is so dark that it almost looks black. I can see a slight tinge of a greenish hue coming through, but it still relatively looks maybe like a blackish brown with a greenish undertone maybe. You do start to get more color starting with number 6, but I don't think any of the blue hues come through until you get to number 8, both for the direct dye and the diluted sections. But if I had to pick a favorite, I think I like 10 through 12 the most. I really like the blue hues that come through on the lighter swatches, and that even happens on the diluted section as well. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but I did notice that it turned out a little bit darker on number 9 and number 11, and then number 8 and 10 are a little bit lighter. So again, everyone's hair is different. Obviously, I don't know whose hair this is, but they probably take color a little bit differently. So even though it's quite dark on some of my swatches, there's a chance it could turn out a little bit lighter, kind of like it does on the number 10 swatch. But overall, I would say it is pretty dark on the direct dye. So as usual, I pulled some of my other swatches so that we could compare brands. And both of these are pretty similar. So we'll just start with Arctic Fox in the color Aquamarine. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. So you can see my numbering system is a little different. I've tweaked some things over the years, so that's why the numbers are different. And then I also used to do 2 separate diluted sections on each strand. So this would be diluted and then diluted again, and that's why those look like that, but this is still the direct dye portion. In terms of depth, it does look like Aquamarine turned out a little bit lighter on the platinum blonde swatch, but pretty much close in depth on the other swatches. Maybe just a little bit lighter, but it's not a huge difference. I think the biggest difference though is the undertone. Aquamarine is slightly more green in undertone compared to these turquoise. And I know we all have different ideas of what colors look like, but I was actually expecting this turquoise one to look a little bit more like Aquamarine. Turquoise to me is a like very green leaning blue, and this Punky color turquoise is quite blue for a turquoise, if that makes sense. But I will say, a lot of the times, especially when you're bleaching your hair can have an even more yellow tone than my swatches do. So there is a chance that putting the Punky color turquoise over much more yellow hair will give it a look much closer to Aquamarine. And maybe that's what they were assuming would happen when they made their dye as blue as they made it. Both of these seem to be quite pigmented. I know Aquamarine is one of the more pigmented colors in the Arctic Fox line. So I would really say preference in color. Like I said, if you have hair that tends to go much more yellow and you feel like Aquamarine turns too green on you, maybe the Punky color would be a better option, and maybe you would get something closer to what you're looking for, if that's the case. The other comparison I wanted to look at today is Manic Panic in the color Voodoo Blue. So this is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. Okay, so I would say that the Manic Panic actually looks a little bit darker in this case. I think the number 12s don't look too far off from each other, but the rest of the swatches all look slightly off. Like the Manic Panic is a little bit darker on the direct dye, which you can even kind of see in here. Most likely I probably did a 4:1 ratio the same, and even this turns out a little bit darker. But undertone wise, they are extremely similar because the Manic Panic one is a little bit darker upon application. I can't say that these are perfect dupes for each other, but if you added just a little bit of diluter to the Manic Panic, it would probably look like this. So even though they're not perfect dupes, they're nearly perfect dupes for each other. So in this case, I would say maybe if you have hair that is a little bit more resistant to dye, maybe the Manic Panic would be a little bit better, because if you dilute it, you can get a slightly better range out of the color. But realistically, they're not like that much different, which I get kind of excited when I find colors that are very similar to each other, because that way, say somebody likes the Punky color, but they aren't able to buy Punky color near them, but they can get Manic Panic, you know, vice versa, whatever. And I will have the individual videos linked down below as well, so if you want to watch the Manic Panic video by itself, I'll have that link below. Same with the Arctic Fox Aquamarine, but my Aquamarine video is a little bit older, just keep that in mind. So now I'd like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as any like video or pictures you see near the end, will all be done in natural lighting. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out, but just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.